The Sunday Paper Review on Off the Ball.
With Optimum Nutrition, the official performance nutrition partner of the IRFU.
This is News Talk.
15th of March 26. You're welcome along to the Sunday Paper Review today, and a happy St Patrick's weekend to you, and a happy Mother's Day to all the mums out there as well. Adrian with you today. Delighted to say we're joined in studio by the sports writer, podcaster with the 42.ie, Gavan Casey. How are you, Gav?
Flying in, Adrian. Thank you. How are you?
Thanks for coming in. Good. And Hugh Farrelly of the Irish Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday. Hugh.
How are you, Adrian?
Thanks a million for coming in to you both. We are a little bit later than usual for those watching on YouTube, but we are going to get straight into the back pages and straight into the rugby. So we're going to begin with the Mail on Sunday, who have down to a T, screams the back headline here, Bundy Aki and Tommy O'Brien in celebratory mode right at the end of the game yesterday. Last gasp, France kick denies Ireland on day of incredible drama. The fallout from the greatest day. We can go there. I'll save that one for a second. The Sunday Times has the trophy celebration, the Triple Crown celebration at least, just a kick away is the headline here. Ireland beat Scotland to win Triple Crown, but title slips from grasp after France's dramatic late win, and lots on the Six Nations inside. The Sunday Independent, crowning glory, Ireland falls short of Six Nations title on a dramatic night. Cian Tracy below writes about Ramos wins it for France with last gasp penalty. The Sun have Don't Stop Believing, Doris, the journey only getting started at the top there, and then they think it's wall over. It is Dow as mural. It is Dow. Pause.
That took me a second.
Me too, it turns out. As Mural Dean puts him 9 clear. Max down.
Score, yeah.
Brilliant goal for a kid. I was watching the match of the day last night.
It is Dow. Sorry. Yeah,
it is Dow.
Sorry, carry on.
Will I go again?
No, you're right.
They think it's all over. It is Dow. Incredible for a 16-year-old, the way he took that goal yesterday. I don't know what Jordan Pickford was up trying to maybe knock one in for Everton, make it 1-1. He gets badly caught out. Doesn't bother his hold running back, which was the biggest mad bit of the whole lot. And then at some point thought, oh, geez, I better start sprinting here. Anyway, it was too late. Max Dahman had rounded a couple of Everton players and buried in the back of the net to become, by some distance, the youngest ever goal scorer in the Premier League. 16 years and 70 days or something like that. And I think the next few after that were 16 years and...
in the hundreds.
A couple of hundred, yeah. Horseshit, we don't care about staying up, says Kieran McGeeney. Armagh beat Dublin inside. This insinuation that Armagh are just building for the championship. It's Max Wowman, much simpler here on the back page of the Sunday People. Teen sensation seals Gunners' late win and becomes youngest scorer in Prem history. And no flair, no hope. Taylor, we had Hoddle and still went down. Who have this Spurs side got? And the opening paragraph, Tottenham boss Igor Tudor is lacking the talent needed for a relegation battle. Now, you could read that either of two ways, I think. Is that his own?
Yeah,
or is it the players?
Squad, yeah.
I'm unsure. And finally, the Sunday Mirror is triple frown with the crown X'd out. I have to say, I don't fully understand that because it is actually a triple crown. But anyway, triple frown. Ramos boots last gasp winner for France to deny England and Ireland. So there's lots in that, and we will get to that for you. But it is a Sunday Paper Review and Off the Ball brought to you by Optimum Nutrition. We're delighted to team up with Optimum Nutrition, the world's #1 performance nutrition brand, as they launch their new global campaign, the Optimum Advantage, with over 35 years at the top of performance nutrition, trusted by the world's best athletes, and a growing partnership with the IRFU. Optimum Nutrition are right at the heart of Irish rugby, which all three of us were, it turns out, yesterday, to segue into events at the Aviva. And then for me, it was back to the couch and shouting at the TV. But you guys had slightly different experiences of consuming this unbelievable drama late last night.
Yeah, it was a pretty special day. A little bit of a microcosm of this weekend, next weekend, 17 years ago. Grand Slam, Bernard Dunn's title fight at the Point as it was then, or possibly the O2 Arena as it was then. I had to make my way from the Aviva over to the 3 Arena as it is now for more world title boxing. Anthony Kakachi getting the job done against Jazza Dickens to become a 2-time super featherweight champion of the world. So he's in rare company in Irish boxing terms. Super guy, like really authentic guy, unbelievable fighter. Not his best performance by any means. He spoke to us afterwards about like the self-doubt he was facing even in the dressing room before walking out there, because his left hand has been injured. He hasn't really been able to spar. He's boxing against a reigning champion who's an excellent technical boxer in his own right. And interesting guy. If people are unfamiliar with Anthony Kakachi, give him a Google, read the coverage of him, watch a few interviews with him. I think Irish sport is lucky to have a guy like him. 37. You know, he's got 3 kids who are like practically grown up. He's a grown ass man. You know, he's a late bloomer, doing well for himself now, moving into a new house with his family. I asked him afterwards, like, what are you most looking forward to over the next couple of days? And the cliche answer is naturally like spend time with the kids. But he was like, I can't wait to have a pizza. You know, Nico's Pizza. He shouted out in Belfast, and so I'm sitting in the 3 Arena. Eventually, because actually, as I got there, it was oversubscribed, so I was sitting on the floor for a while, which added to the kind of like chaos of it. And then Anthony Kakachi is making his ring walk, walks out to Zombie. The place is buzzing. Pierce O'Leary has just been on, who's almost in terms of his cultural potential or his potential to become transcendent, he's almost like a reincarnation of Bernard Dunn from that glorious era, in the sense that he sold 5,500 tickets last night. He grew up in Sheriff Street, local hero. Another guy with a real like gravitational pull to his personality. But as Kakachi's walking to the ring, somebody shouts across at me like, England are back up. I get a stream up on my phone, and it turns out England weren't up at that point. It was France who were up. England scored their last try. They're up by 2. We're watching the last 2 minutes on my phone. Like literally as Kakachi's walking into the ring, the arena is buzzing. There are 20 people around my phone watching this like play out in the final game of the Six Nations. Everybody invested in it. Even those who aren't rugby fans are asking, like, what actually happens if England win? Like, if England win, do Ireland win the Six Nations? And it was just like a sensory overload, you know. It's just the utter exhilaration of it or excitement of it. Kind of spinning plates, like trying to keep an eye on like Anto's ring walk, because like these are rare occasions for Irish boxing. I didn't want to miss that while I'm there in person, but equally I cover a lot of rugby and I didn't want to miss the end of the greatest championship ever.
Is the thing.
So, like, you know, people talk about double screening when they're watching TV, and I guess it was a form of that. But my God, like it made me realise like this is kind of why the 3 of us would get into sports media. This is kind of why the people who are tuning into this on YouTube or listening to it on the radio are tuning into it. It like, this is fun, you know. Like these are kind of nights or days that you'll take with you for the rest of your life. You know,
Brilliant.
You'll remember the people who you were with. You'll remember how these things made you feel. You know, in darker moments, you can kind of reach back to those moments and think, you know what, it's not always bad. And what a day.
Conor McKeown has a bone to pick with you, but we'll come to that. Hugh, where were you?
Yeah, I'd agree with Gav. I think it was just, I was working, so our offices are on Hallington Road, which means you're invested in the match all day. You can see the Aviva. The fans are streaming down, so you can hear the Aviva. So you're involved. And I'm at the newspaper gig now 28 years. I can't remember a night like that. It was crazy, like, because just to explain, and in France I want to pay credit to all the papers, because we're looking at the hard copies here. So you go online, you might see some of those filed at, like, I think Delaglio did this piece at midnight online. But you know, when you look at the hard copy, that had to be on deadline. I'd imagine some of them extended the deadlines. We have a hard deadline of 10:30. So
whatever happens,
like hard deadline of 10:30, right? So you have this going on. You had West Ham and Man City, and you had Dublin Armagh, and you got racing results and all this. So you're like, as I think Gavin used the phrase, they're spinning plates. But this is why you do it, as you say, Gav. Like, it's a buzz, you know. So we had Rory Keane on standby, like Liberace, with two different pieces to write. We have a great designer called Simon, who's not into sport. And I said, look, Simon, we're going to have 2 pages here. So one of them is the one you see there, down to a T.
What was the other one?
Well,
give us the headline.
We had a discussion over that headline as well, because some lads were, can I say this, like they wanted a kick in the galls, which I thought was a bit too,
But
it didn't.
I like that too.
It's a bit tabloidy. I know it is technically a tabloid, but
both of those work. So was there a headline?
But the other one for winning was "It's Coming Home," and we had the whole thing done. And I kept ringing Simon, kind of going, Simon, go with the French page. Simon, England are after going ahead. It was like back and forth, like, and he was like, "Would you just make up your mind?" I said, "I can't.
I'm not being indecisive here."
No, it was like,
don't blame me.
And people were texting, "Do you want a hand? Do you want a hand?" All this kind of stuff. It was just madness, but you know, hugely exhilarating madness. And to see something, and you know, after, it was very hard not to go on the lash last night, because but
particularly where the office is.
I had 2 pints, I'll admit it, in Smith's, which is a good rugby pub, and I ran into a load of fans there. And everyone was up, you know, not just because they'd been out all day, but because, okay, we didn't win the title, but there was a real sense of euphoria about, A, how this tournament was played out. I can't remember anything to compete with this Six Nations. 2009 was pretty good. You referenced that earlier. Maybe because we won the Grand Slam, but it was an entertaining tournament. But this was like off the charts.
Yeah.
And there's also a huge sense of goodwill now behind Ireland again, which is a long way from where we were, was it 4 or 5 weeks ago after Paris?
Yeah.
Even after Italy, there was a lot of doom and gloom.
Oh, yeah.
And you referenced Conor McKeown's piece there. No, I'd have issue with some of it, but he's not wrong in terms of the widely vacillating attitudes in Irish rugby, up and down, and we're brilliant, we're bad. It's been a tough one, I think, for the media to stay on top of, because it's changing. And I would just sum it up like this in terms of where we are. I've never been, and I wouldn't be known for this, I've never been as positive about as I am now about where Farrell is and where this team is, because I think there's been a massive mind shift in this Six Nations, and it's all good. Let's
use that as a launching off pad as to where we're at, and some of it will touch on the bits and pieces that are in the papers. And by the way, I'll go for the Sunday Times in terms of they've done a timeline out of what team were on top at what time of the day.
Oh,
and it's a fantastic ribbon of a thing. But we'll talk about the Ireland report card then to kick us off. So coming into the tournament, the issues or the talking points were, we had a predictable game plan that teams had figured out, and it wasn't evolving into something new, so teams had us figured. There wasn't enough genuine depth in enough positions. You could talk about the props. You maybe talk about the variety, let's say, of options, maybe that were in the back row. Certainly 10, certainly 9, possibly all the outside back positions. After years of good discipline, that was all on the slide, increasing numbers of yellow cards and focusing in the lack of certainty as well, outside of the depth bit, but the lack of certainty at 10. Huge concerns.
Yeah, the arse was falling out of it.
It was. That's well summed. And now suddenly the arse is not falling out of it anymore, and all of those things are pretty much fixed.
Yeah.
Don't get complacent.
Look, not to... I suppose I am starting off on a negative or just maybe a sense of reality. Like, to look at the wider game, you've got 3 provinces in the Challenge Cup, and Leinster are the only one of the Irish provinces who seem capable of winning a trophy. That is a little bit of it's a serious slip, actually, based on recent history even. So, I wouldn't say that everything is absolutely spot on, but, my change in attitude towards this team over the last 6 weeks is actually embarrassing. I was reflexive in how I felt about it, and coming into this championship and after France, I probably would have agreed with all of the points that you've outlined there in terms of areas of concern. Also, let's again be realistic about it. In their last 5 games against France, South Africa, and New Zealand, 2 of which were against New Zealand, they'd lost all of those games by double-digit scores in the last 2 years. So, what else would you say other than they're not the team that they were? Because they were routinely beating these teams up as far as 2023 and even into 2024, the Tour of South Africa. So, you kind of have to, trust what you're seeing with your eyes as well. I don't think being kind of critical of the team's performance was erroneous, and the team themselves, Farrell himself, never really made excuses for it. In fact, sometimes you might say to Farrell, say after a victory as gratifying as England at Twickenham, did the media stuff actually bother you? Do you feel like kind of flipping the bird at us? Not really. We actually weren't good when you were saying we weren't good. But in this championship, they've pulled from the bag 2 of the most memorable Irish rugby performances that we've probably seen in our lifetimes. Yesterday's game against Scotland was absolutely thrilling. A really high quality game. Scotland pitched up.
Scotland showed up.
They pitched up. Some of Scotland's scores, they were actually irrepressible at times, and Ireland defended very well in general, but that first try for, is it Darcy Graham who scores in the right hand corner, or is it, how many phases was it? It was
it was
20
good.
plus, I think. And Ireland still, over double scored them by the end of it. That's a serious effort.
They pitched up in a better way than England did. Did they fully pitch up though? What was Finn Russell's out of 10? What would you say?
He did some lovely things. We're used to them disappearing out the gate. As I agree with Gavin, I think they showed up to play and we just monstered them. This wasn't a rolling over a weak Scottish team or a team that just implodes. They came with confidence. Darcy Graham wasn't, faking it when he said Ireland were there for the taking. They genuinely believed. And they have real talent in that team. And Ireland just seemed to have an answer for everything they tried. Like Russell did some really nice things.
Ireland put him under savage pressure as well.
But Ireland looked really well
Russell.
coached. Russell, yeah.
I mean, like how often was Ireland's like tail gunner in defence just targeting Russell? Like it was crazy. Like the degree to which they were able
They
to.
seem to have Scotland really worked out.
Yeah, they did.
know?
But like, let's remember, this was a very much a live game up as far as around 65 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, it was tense.
That's a very good point, right? And see, this is the point where, like, I've always had huge respect for Farrell, but it went through the roof on 65 minutes because I think there was only 5 points in it. He brought 6 subs off the bench. 6 guys who are far from frontliners. I think Darren Murray came back on, Michael Milne. Like it was just a sign to me that the penny has dropped to such an extent that he's willing to look at these guys, throw them into a pressure situation for what's coming down the line. It was a massive statement of intent, a hugely impressive move, and those guys would be so much stronger for that experience. Trusting these guys, imagine how those kids feel. Like Darren Murray's playing for Connacht. He was at his first Six Nations game.
It was, yeah.
And we trusted him to see out a Triple Crown game of that intensity with that exposure.
Murray, by the way, Hugh, the people of Roscommon are up in arms.
Well, you know when he was included on the bench, you know, against my better instinct at this point, I'm thinking, James Ryan is a big loss there. You know, James Ryan had a fantastic championship, and I really liked Darren Murray as a player, having watched him for Connacht for, you know, many a year, but I'm thinking you've probably lost something there in terms of bench impact. And I probably found a little bit of a curious decision, given the options still available to him, the likes of Adogbo. He called up Ian Henderson, for example, who's a proven entity. But like, why am I even questioning Farrell's selection?
Wasn't that it? Like, Adogbo has been around the squad. You could see him there afterwards.
Yeah.
So Adogbo came up. That was hugely uplifting. I know how much it meant to people of Cove, his family. He had a good game. And then he was told, Edmund, we want you, boy, but go off and improve this, that, other. And
mainly it's kind of aerobic fitness, to be honest.
He looks at Murray. So another option, like he did the same thing with Tommy O'Brien, didn't he? Like he left Tommy O'Brien out, then brought him back. He came back super extra motivated.
And that time,
Gibson Park.
Yeah.
Well, like that,
he's knocked it out of the park with the selection, and it's gone against everything that I would have thought Farrell was before. Because as I said, I had huge respect for him, but I really didn't like the way he would go to the same guys over and over again. And I think that France game, I think that could go down in history as one of the most important games in Irish history, because there was a massive mind shift after that.
But I would say, Hugh, like, I agree with you in that, like, we've discovered depth now that we didn't realise we had coming into the championship. But a lot of those discoveries are kind of circumstantial as a result of injuries.
Injuries, we're a good selector, but I don't know how many times I've been here saying we have to roll the dice, and lads would be saying we don't have the talent. Like Brendan Fanning was sitting over there a few weeks ago, and one of the most respected, and he said we don't, and he's right. Well, you don't know till you try it, and now we've tried it, and there's more there than we thought there was.
It started out with the injuries and they were enforced, and then it seemed to become something else at a certain point where
because guys who got their opportunities as a result of injury, like Stuart McCluskey is a great example of that. Like he got an opportunity probably 12 months ago or so, and he just hasn't looked back. We're probably looking at, I mean, I hope he's player of the championship. I'm not sure when that's announced,
but do you know what I mean, Gav and Adrian, in terms of before there was still this massive pressure to win the next game, Six Nations, RFU, all that was blown away, and I'm wondering, is David Humphreys part of this? Because we had Nucifora there before, who did what he did and a lot of good things, but he was an Australian. Humphreys has been on the scene since the early 90s. So he knows the history. He knows what's happened over the years. I'd say a lot of the players, maybe the backroom team like Andrew Goodman, they wouldn't know about Finlay Calder 91, all the history of where it's gone wrong. Humphreys would. He was involved in 95. He was in Lons in 99. He missed the post by that much. I was there in Melbourne in 03 when we would have beaten Australia, which would have got us a match against Scotland in the quarterfinals. No offence to Matty Williams, but we'd have won that. You know, so I'm wondering, did he get through to Farrell, or did something happen?
What tease that out? What's the point about Humphreys? Because he's very young in the job, and everything you would assume to know about the job is like long-term strategy, no quick fixes here.
I think, like, I'm not saying Farrell didn't get it, but he came into Irish rugby 10 years ago, right? So he's invested in it now, but there's a historical aspect to this, there's a cultural aspect to this, and I'm boring people going on about it, but there's 40 years of underachievement for Irish rugby. Humphreys is aware of that. You get the sense that many of the modern fans, even media, don't see it in those terms. They were all talking about winning the last World Cup when we've never won a knockout game. Humphreys would get that. O'Gara gets it. You can see it in his column. He writes about it regularly in the Irish Examiner. Humphreys would know that history and know that culture. And I wonder, did he just, I'm supposition.
Yeah.
Did he say, Andy, we're looking ahead now to 18 months? Because everything that's come out since
that he would give him the freedom to, okay, I'm with you. All right.
Well, he'd have to get it on squared with the RFU, but I mean, like, the RFU, no offence, but like, it's not a Blazer thing here. It's about professional rugby and what's next. And I always argue that if you look at guys, you can win matches and build for the future and uplift everybody, and that's what's happened.
Well, if he's the one that's been responsible for that, top of the class,
we can't say for certain.
But but I think we've been crying out for that for some time.
I don't think he is. Like, it is an interesting supposition, but I think the biggest figure in Irish rugby wearing a tracksuit or a suit is Andy Farrell.
But would you
does what he wants.
accept that his attitude towards selection stuff changed?
Absolutely.
Because when he, look at last November, like when we came out of the last World Cup, he was on the record as saying, the story continues, you know, this is just a blip and we keep going. And he kept picking the same guys.
Yeah.
Now that's changed enormously. And if you listen to the rhetoric, and I'll hand you back to the conch now, they're talking about a journey. They're talking about 18 months' time. They're talking about progress. That whole language around this team has changed in a hugely positive way.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think there's a fair chance that Farrell has had to slightly shift his policy because of injury again, and he's enjoyed what he's seen, and he's realised, actually, I can do this. Like, one of the criticisms against his selection for many years, probably mostly from people outside of Leinster who feel as though there's a disproportionate Leinster representation or a disproportionate lack of representation of their province in Ireland Matchday 23s, is like he goes to his trusted lieutenants too often. He doesn't really pick foreign players from other provinces, etc. I've always been of the mindset that I would kind of defer to coaches who are seeing these players on the grass every day and know what they're capable of, as opposed to what we're seeing, which is maybe 50 to 80 minutes on a given Saturday or Sunday. Like, it's actually a relatively small sample size in terms of all the intangible things that coaches are looking for and seeing in Carton House or elsewhere. So I'm like, I'll trust the head coach for the most part when it comes to selection. But what we've seen in this championship, like how reinvigorated have Ireland been by their Ulster players in particular? And Ulster were one of the two kind of foreign provinces coming into this championship. Again, some of these guys are playing because of injury. Robert Balogun is an absolute revelation. He adds a new dimension to Ireland's attack. He let's be honest, he wouldn't have gotten his chance if Mac Hansen had been fit coming into the championship, because Farrell knows Hansen is a proven entity at test level. He's an unbelievable defender. He's an excellent first receiver, kind of second playmaker option. And like, Mac Hansen would have been the starter. He was on the Lions tour with Farrell only a few months back, but because of injury, Balogun comes in. And now, as you move into the summer, if Balogun is still fit, fingers crossed, like, you'd have to say, like, on form, he's first choice, right? But I think Farrell sort of fell into a situation in which he was forced to make some of these calls and back some of the players that some fans have been calling for to be included for a long time, and it's worked. And now he's like, I can actually roll with this. He's able to adapt. He's a smart guy. And one last one is just like where I think he did miscalculate slightly in selection, and again, I always deferred to him on it, was out half, right? I think he possibly overestimated what Sam Prendergast is capable of right now at this juncture in his career. Maybe looking too much at potential as opposed to the reality that most of us could see. And I think Sam Prendergast is a super talented player. I understood why Farrell would prefer him in a team to Jack Crowley at times, in the sense that he's a better distributor of the ball. He's better at sticking to game plans. Crowley has a tendency at times to go off script. But like, let's be honest, like,
But look where we're at now.
And Farrell
Prendergast has caps under his belt and could come back into the equation. Whereas in previous World Cups, we had Jack Carty, Ian Madigan, these guys. And Johnny Sexton said this at the top table a few weeks ago. We stuck with Meath for too long. We didn't look at other options. He's looked at Sam Prendergast now.
Quarterfinal against New Zealand.
Frawley looked good off the bench.
Yeah, he did. Quarterfinal against New Zealand in 2023. They didn't know whether they could trust Jack Crowley to come on and influence the game. And my personal belief would have been like, Johnny Sexton at that point was running a quicksand. Like he was 37 or whatever it was. And I honestly probably would have rolled the dice. Like, Crowley was in decent form that season. Munster won.
But it would have been a roll of the dice.
It would have been a roll of the dice.
Whereas in 18 months' time.
And you see Crowley yesterday, like, we've had, all of us, as a rugby public, have had conversations about this out-half debate and some of the vitriol around it, etc. And like last week, against Wales, I was like, Crowley was okay. But like, I have long maintained that whereas we have described the out-half situation as being like an embarrassment of riches almost, or like, we've got like 2 or 3 great options here for the years to come. I've maintained for a long time, it's actually going to become a position of weakness. In that, I don't believe that Prendergast or Curley right now are anywhere near the level of a Finn Russell or even a Finn Smith, to be honest, or a Marcus Smith. But yesterday, Jack Crowley was absolutely excellent, and back-to-back games, he was okay against Wales. Like, did some good things. He played with authority yesterday.
Yeah, he did.
Because he feels like he has the backing.
But I also think Sam Prendergast has been looking at everything that's going on, and let's not go down this path, but he's been looking at everything that's been going on, particularly with the pack dominance or parity at the very least over the last number of weeks, and there's an FFS in his head, I'm sure.
But Jack Crowley's had that exact same.
Yeah.
He will have felt that
that's
exact
not to
same
diminish
thing.
Jack Crowley whatsoever. It's just to say that Prendergast probably can feel a little bit like, let me at them, coach. Come on.
I wouldn't be starting Crowley from here to the World Cup, but I'd let him know he's the man. You're our guy. And I'd be looking at Byrne, I'd be looking at Frawley, and I'd be looking at Prendergast in various games. The way he's rotated and selected judiciously, so that when you get to Australia, if Crowley goes down, okay, here's option B. It happened in New Zealand in 2011. Stephen Bino McDonald, what was his name?
Sam Donald or Sam
Beaver.
Yeah.
He kicked the thing. We have to prepare.
Stephen Donald.
Donald, excuse me. Yeah, I was thinking of Sam Darnold.
We have to prepare for
So that's to say the horses for courses thing that is done now. He's our guy. On we go. So this thing he's
our guy, but not every game.
No, but we'd accommodated, I think, as rugby public, I have to use your expression, that right, it's horses for courses. It'll be you this day, you the other day, but it's not. That's done now.
We're as a rugby public or as a country in general, I appreciate there are going to be people watching this or listening to this who aren't rugby fans, but in a general sense, if 1 million people tune in to watch Ireland against England at Twickenham, for example, then you have to say there is there's
an audience.
Exactly, right? Mm-hmm. And out half for the Irish men's national team is almost a position of office in terms of the two figures we've had most recently. Johnny Sexton, who's one of the greatest sports people ever come out of the country. Ronan O'Gara the same. Two incredibly forceful personalities, two legends of Irish sport. And we've kind of been indoctrinated in thinking that it has to be almost like a franchise quarterback in that role. That it has to be this guy, and you move forward with this guy for a full World Cup cycle, and in Sexton's case, probably 3 World Cup cycles. You look at South Africa, who've won the last 2 World Cups. They've routinely deployed a different out half, like during a rugby championship. I mean, they've played 4 of them. Now you can make the point, and I would accept it, that when push comes to shove in a World Cup quarterfinal, semi-final, they will defer to Handré Pollard, who can kick his goals, right? And that's been an issue for Ireland, obviously, in this championship. But my point is, if you look at them now, whether it's Sasha, whether it's Pollard would still be in the mix, Manny Libok, etc. All of these guys will be getting game time, and they've won the last 2 World Cups. So it doesn't have to be, one out half to whom you defer as your first choice.
Just to round off the point, because I agree with everything Gavin's just said. Specific example would be the pool games, and there's a round 16 before the quarterfinal of the next World Cup, right? So what did we do the last World Cup? We ran the same team against Tonga, was it Samoa? I can't even remember, the minor games. We played Sexton all the way through. So I used the phrase quicksand by the quarterfinal. What do we do the next World Cup? We play Crowley against Scotland. We mix it up. We have options of battle-hardened guys who can go in for the different games, so that when we arrive on the big one, we're good to go.
Jack Hardy became the fall guy when we lost to Japan in the 2019 World Cup. Jack Hardy had barely played for him.
He hadn't been hardened.
I just want to also round out the conversation about Andy Farrell. So he emerges from the tunnel about 5 or 10 minutes after the full-time whistle yesterday, and he appears on the big screens, and there's not quite a cacophony, but definitely a warmth, I think, from the crowd when they see him appearing.
I'd say it was a cacophony, to be honest.
Let's go with cacophony. Shane Horgan in the Sunday Times today is saying Andy Farrell out-coached Gregor Townsend and Steve Borthwick when Ireland were playing England. And another aspect of all of this is how his stock, I suppose, has risen so well over the last number of weeks. His contract is up after the next Rugby World Cup. There's been a lot of conversation about where he might go. Can we expect the RFU to sit down with him now and that this gets hammered out over the next few weeks, or where is that at? What can we expect to hear next?
I don't know about the next few weeks, but I mean, certainly the RFU want to keep him. To me, the period of time beyond the next World Cup is almost like an abstract concept. It's so distant. It feels so distant to me. And where I'd be sort of a little bit more laid back about this is that, if Farrell decided after a second World Cup with Ireland that he wanted a new challenge, I'd be like, you owe us nothing at this point. And it just, as I say, it feels so far away that I'm not immediately worried about it. And yet he's proven really over the course of this championship that he probably is the best possibly qualified person to begin perhaps a new transition, you know, heading into 2031, I guess it would be at that point. But I think in elite sport in this day and age, it's exceptionally rare that somebody would go for as long as Farrell would if he was to take Ireland to a third World Cup. And I will admit, and I said it on the 42's rugby podcast, which we do, like there was a time after the France game, and in probably over the last 18 months in those games against South Africa, New Zealand, France that I mentioned, where I was like, this could be it for him. You know, I would acknowledge and I appreciate him as one of the best coaches in world rugby and one of the best coaches we've ever had in Irish sport. But maybe this is just that sort of jumping off point. Maybe his messaging is no longer landing with this group of players. That's a hard thing to do, by the way. Like if you're talking about like the way elite rugby coaching setups work, like there's a lot of theming done. There are guests brought in from different walks of life to kind of
freshen it up.
Invigorate a team and sort of maybe like somebody who's giving a speech on kind of history, or it may be somebody who
Ranald Fiennes, I remember, is always the one that's been there.
But like if it's the same guy bringing in these people, like the concept itself gets a little bit old afterwards. So I was thinking maybe it's just he's not quite able to.
But the last few weeks
stimulate this team,
change that.
Yeah. He's gotten two of the best performances of his era out of them in two games in which they kind of needed a response against England and needed to win silverware against Scotland. And there were two games in which, I mean, England were favoured to beat Ireland, obviously. Ireland were favoured to beat Scotland by around 5 points, I think, in the end. But, like, they were, practically 50-50 games or close enough to
I was doing an off-air thing with a former Ireland player 2 weeks ago. And I would have been of that view as well. And we were less certain at that time about what was to emerge subsequently. And this player said, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And it was off air, so there was no about the idea that his voice was getting tired.
I don't think that's the issue. I do agree with Gavin 100% that there's a natural jumping off point. And if England aren't on the phone to Andy Farrell offering him £3 million, and I would say, there should be no resentment here if he takes England's job. That's his country, he played for them. And I'd say, Andy, thank you so much.
That's a tricky one for, like, the RFU might have been thinking about that yesterday afternoon, and now this morning they're like, oh,
no, but I mean, okay, England showed England are kind of scary and they got their act together.
Yeah.
But like Andy Farrell, I mean, it's where he's from. It's a country represented with great distinction in two codes. I mean, you could not begrudge him taking that job. I think he probably would be able to refresh his message, but I think it's come to a natural finishing point, and even the language that's coming out suggests that it might be building up to this point. And if that's going to happen, he goes to England, they should be on the phone straight away to Ronan O'Gara. We have a natural successor.
The one complication with England is obviously, like, you're still talking about that potential jumping off point being 18 months away. And it's like, what do you do in the interim if you're England, right? You've still got a World Cup to prepare for. You've got to have somebody in situ. And maybe they just stick with Borthwick because he's taking them to a World Cup.
If they played as they did last night.
Yeah. I mean...
So, like, ultimately the end point on that is that if we don't hear any news on this, whatever it is, couple of weeks, couple of months, then we're creeping towards the World Cup, and obviously his contract runs out after that. But if he hasn't signed up, obviously that would be in...
It's always an awkward one, Adrian, right? But like, I'll project what could happen, right? Because it's happened before. You give him a new contract for 3 or 4 years, we lose to Argentina, or the Scots do us in the pool stage, and then we just
But I think as we sit here today, if this announcement comes in the next couple of months, nobody's going to say the RFU have done a bad thing. People are going to say
I like the idea
the right
of
move.
It's been used a few times. The last dance. This is the way to go out. Take us to history. And then on your way, and thank you very much for everything you've done.
Well, I mean, if he wins the World Cup, that's the only place I'm going.
Oh, now we're back. Yeah.
Here we go again.
We go to the World Cup piece right now.
One tiny point. So, like, I'd be in favour. Like, as I said, I think he probably is the best coach in world rugby, best head coach in terms of emotional intelligence, getting performances out of teams that don't actually even seem capable of it. And I'd be in favour of the IRFU extending him. I completely acknowledge Hugh's point, and I did sort of weigh that up as well a couple of weeks ago. Like, maybe that is what I would prefer, just part of it out of kind of care to Farrell in a way, in that you'd want him to end on a high as opposed to fizzling out the way it did for, say, Big Jack in 96, or was it 96? Like, he's going to be an absolute legend of Irish sport, and it would be class for him to maybe take on a new project while he's still at the top, But I actually think he's so good. It would be like, it may be naive to think, oh, we can bring somebody in and kind of start again. And just one tiny point on it, like, because I think the presumption among people is that, like, oh, he will probably go. Because, like, Owen is involved in Saracens, will kind of take on a coaching role there. He'll be able to work with his son. I think his daughter possibly is involved with Saris as well. But, like, he also has another son who's only doing his junior side, I guess, in Blackrock College. So he has to weigh that up as well. The kid isn't finished.
Good hurler, apparently.
Yeah, and he's, like, you're moving a kid to England potentially at a
not a great hurling scene. the key factor in all of this.
Not a hurling stronghold. But these are the familial kind of factors you have to take into consideration. He's about to head into the leaving cert cycle. I guess he can go over there and do, is it A levels or whatever, But it's just, these are things that may influence his decision. Maybe it's not as clear cut as him wanting to take on a new project at the end of this. Maybe he's actually happy living in Dublin and wait for the youngest to grow up and take us through 2031, and then we'll have this conversation again.
The Dublin hurlers need to do what they did for David Clifford a couple of years ago and say, listen, that Australia's not for you, my son. You hang around here, we'll get you. What, you mean he's not a prospect for the Dublin senior team? Don't worry about that. This is not the key factor.
Can I just go back to something Gav said way back about McCluskey?
Oh, what a player.
How is he not getting man of the match? He should have got man of the match in Twickenham. He should have got man of the match yesterday. Did you see the offload he did for the Tommy O'Brien thing?
Yeah. To be honest,
we didn't use him in France. You have a 6'4" guy, 20 stone, and we didn't use him against France. And once we started using him, it changed everything. I know Caelan Doris had a great game, and
Tyke Byrne would have been the closest to
I thought McCluskey.
He was right up there, yeah.
I think he's been robbed of 2 man of the match awards. I don't think it's a big scandal because they all played well, but
is it sometimes you get with a player who's doing so well and has set the bar so high for themselves, that they can almost be punished by it because you expect them to be a 10 out of 10.
Gibson Park is a classic
he might not have been fair.
I know you love your ratings, Adrian. Like, he's getting 10s everywhere. No man of the match awards.
Yeah, makes no sense.
It's probably a microcosm of his career in a way, in the sense that, like, he should also have probably if he played for Wales, England, Scotland, possibly even France, he'd have 50 more test caps.
Was it the broadcasters that picked the man of the match?
Was it Quinny on TV3?
It could be hooking into your issue here straight away.
Back row, taking a back row. A back row always gets
but Jesus, like, he wasn't wrong. I just think, to echo Gav, like, where he's come from, what he's had to battle through to get here, and then to seize that chance the way he has.
He's always been a class player, but he has improved. Like, there's, I've been a fan of his for an awfully long time. I remember saying to him, like, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, around some November International, in the back arse of the Aviva Stadium somewhere, like, do you ever think, like, as I just said, like, if you were from, like, pretty much any other country, you'd have, like, 35, 40 plus more caps? And he was like, yeah, but sure, I'm not from
the Welsh always
what am I going to do?
The Welsh always say that if Tony Ward was Welsh, he'd have 50, 60 caps.
Oh,
yeah.
He got 18 for us.
But, you're right, Hugh, like to get his opportunity now and to capitalise upon it to such an extent, to the extent that the French love him. They're calling him the Irish fridge.
Do they?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
But, like, to the extent that, like, I would say among, like, the kind of a more global rugby audience, he is now considered a world-class 12.
He would be.
At his age, at this stage of his career, it's unbelievable. I mean, his power, his handling skills, his defence is unbelievable. Like, some of the defensive interventions he made in this championship they will be the moments that will stay with me, to be honest. And
think of the highlights of the championship. One of them is going to be hunting down Marcus Smith in Twickenham.
Yeah. Do you know what? I wasn't.
And the other ones are going to be those Tom Brady passes.
Yeah.
And the guys who won the Man of the Match awards, are we going to look at their highlights?
The offload yesterday was sumptuous.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it's not just the idea of it, it's the way he paced it. There was sympathy in the past.
I haven't seen too many fridges make a pass like that, I must say.
Is
it intended to be a compliment?
Just he's a big
unit, like.
Yeah. But like, with that beautiful offload you're talking about yesterday, game is over at that point, right? So you're kind of thinking, if you see somebody throw a pass like that, sometimes you're thinking you're playing with house money. The thing is, we've seen him do it in live games, the exact same pass. Actually, arguably a better pass to Balogun against Italy, for example. Like, he's just doing this routinely while games are very much live.
Yesterday for Balogun to go over for the corner as well, it was half.
That was an unbelievable pass.
I can see some more Ulster lads coming into the picture.
It's worked.
One thing we haven't talked about, or no one's talked about, is 13. Ringrose has gone through the tournament kind of under the radar. He's been solid.
I think he very much improved the last couple of weeks.
I think it's possibly the only area we don't have proper cover for at this point. So I think possibly he was in the squad, but we haven't seen him. Tom Farrell's got a couple of runs.
Farrell, unless you were shifting around.
I'll be looking at 13 now. That's the next task because Farrell's almost sorted
Can you
everything
use
out.
a square peg in a round hole, like if you're starting, let's say,
tried that with
McCluskey and Ringrose, and then Aki is your 23, and he's
They
covered
tried
both?
it, didn't they? Didn't they start
did it against
Henshaw and Aki and
Italy
Aki at
away
13? Yeah, it was and it didn't
3
work.
years ago. But it's so difficult to defend 13 as a channel. Like if you're more used to playing 12, you will get found out.
13 is a really interesting position, right? If you look at Irish rugby history, we've been blessed with 13s. We went from Michael Gibson to Brendan Mullen to Brian O'Driscoll to Gary Ringrose over 50 years.
Jared Payne in there as well, as in just worth an honourable mention, I think, because he was only there for a short time. But
Was he a 13 or 12? Was he 13?
yeah, played a lot 13.
How dare you
and
mention
15.
Jared Payne next to Brian O'Driscoll and Mike Gibson? Like, Jesus.
Fair, but I think he was,
Well, no, look,
he was an excellent.
He did a
defensive
job
player.
for a season or two.
I thought he was very good. Yeah,
But that would be an area to look at now. But going back to the Ulster point, I'd be looking at the Ward brothers as well.
they're unbelievable. Yeah.
Like it's very encouraging to get back to the earlier point. Connacht look like Lancaster might be bedding in now. They've had a couple of good results. It took Richie Murphy a while to get going with Ulster. He's flying it now. Lancaster's a quality coach. He's going to bring. I'd keep an eye on Paul Boyle. He's been around for a while. He could be another late bloomer. I think he's quality.
Sean Jansen, I love.
Sean Jansen's good, yeah.
Boyle was around the squad at some point.
He was. He got a cap, one of those November Canada caps or Japan or something. But he's got dog in him. He's really like a young Peter O'Mahony, even though he's older now. But he's got that same kind of style.
One last one on the depth, right? Like, because obviously losing as many loose heads as we did coming into the championship, I was petrified. And the scrum wasn't really an issue against France, but it turns out they haven't emphasised the scrum at all over the course of the championship. I think that's kind of a terrifying reality as well, because at some point they will. They need to find a tight head like Aldigeri is not quite up to the level, I'd say, of their other 7 starting forwards. But you look at Tom O'Toole, like, who's moved across from tight end. He's been unbelievable. Like he was class yesterday. His all-round game was class. Scrummaging has been really excellent. Like, it kind of feels like he's good enough at loosehead that he may just become a permanent loosehead.
So who's our? Let's go into that conversation, right? In terms of, we don't want to spend the 4 hours that we could spend at it, but to go through each position and who's our starting player and what's the depth like, and you can start there.
Well, like Andrew Porter's obviously still the first choice loosehead when fit, but
there's talk he's going to switch back. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So, like, the weird thing is, there's a chance at the World Cup, for example, that you could have Tom O'Toole starting at loosehead and Andrew Porter starting at tight head. Whereas O'Toole has been moved across to solve an issue at loosehead caused partly by the absence of Andrew Porter, but it may be that they wind up switching. Paddy McCarthy is probably second choice still, you have to say. He's made a big enough
so many
impact.
now. You've Milne, Boyle,
Thing.
McCarthy,
Yeah.
Beelum.
Lockman has done well.
Lockman, like
Milne, Milne has brought a bit
Milne
of put a few dents in lads.
done really well,
Yeah. So, like, suddenly a position of real weakness, or it felt like, now largely because of injury again, is like, okay, we're actually okay there. Like, Tom O'Toole can hang with the best of them.
And
really.
on the other side, Furlong, Beelum,
Clarkson,
O'Toole.
Yeah.
and O'Toole potentially, and Porter potentially.
Exactly, yeah. So
getting all that into a World Cup squad is going to be fun.
Yeah.
But it's just great to have those options.
And this is a very different conversation than one we were having 2 months ago.
yes.
I was there for the Tom Court years. God love Tommy, lovely fella. But like he was, and the Tony Buckley was there as well. We know, and this is before you couldn't have 2 props on the bench.
Yeah.
And if John Hayes went down, we were goosed like until Mike Ross came along.
There's nothing worse than an Irish person saying he was a lovely fella, because you know it's coming.
Tom is sound, in fairness. Really nice
all
guy.
of that being said, though, like so we're saying, like, we have front row depth now, and you extend that to hooker, where you've got Sheehan, Kelleher, Tom Stewart, Gus McCarthy hasn't, he hasn't factored into the equation in this championship. Our scrum has still been under savage pressure in most of the games. So, maybe most is probably in 3 of the games, right? So, like, Italy did a job on us, England did a job on us. Last week was okay, wasn't it? Well, second half, Nicky Smith got on top of Ty Farrell. Farrell was unbelievable yesterday. Point being, like, we can talk about front row depth until the cows come home, but, like, you still need to actually scrummage well, and that's not just on a front row. Like, your second row composition, even back rows, despite the fact that sometimes it looks like they're not, like, integral to the scrum, they are important. So it's an area of, like, that they need to tighten up, obviously. but at least it seems as though they have the talent with which to work to do that, as opposed to.
Well, to back up that, Rory O'Connor, to get back to the papers, makes that point in his Ireland growing to a team of giants. They're problem solving as they go. You mentioned Furlong there. The line-out was a big topic before. Now it seems to be. I saw Joe McCarthy going up like a swallow like yesterday, which is I didn't expect to see.
He won 4 attacking lineouts.
You know?
He made a balls of one of Scotland's lineouts that resulted in an Ireland penalty because he kind of disrupted the Scottish lineout jumper. Ball bounces back and on Ireland's side, and a Scottish player, I can't remember who, gets pinged for a deliberate knock on. So he had 4 attacking lineout receptions, as in he was targeted 4 times. Took them with aplomb, as you say.
Yeah.
That was the same number as Tyke Byrne, who you would say usually would be very much the number one option. But now suddenly McCarthy is who apparently is visibly is difficult to lift because he's such a large man. He looks pretty good at it.
And you bring Ryan Baird into that equation. You bring Tom Ahern potentially if he can get a run. You see, you forget about the guys that are missing.
Jack Conan is an excellent liner.
So, sorry, second row, if we were picking a team for tomorrow, right, we're really picking 2 from McCarthy, Ryan and Byrne.
I'd be going McCarthy, Ryan. I think he's in a real streak of form.
And make room for Byrne elsewhere.
And Byrne at 6
has to play.
potentially.
He has to play. So
and there's a caveat, assuming that they're protected up to 18 months' time.
Yeah.
You have to mind these guys now.
I thought there was a revealing moment in the game last week where Byrne was doing the post-match interview and Jackie asked him, what position would you prefer to play? And he gave the usual political thing and he walked off, and Simon Zebo started laughing and he said, he doesn't like playing the second row at all.
That chat. They don't like the old...
If I was Tyke Byrne, I'd be straight on, shut up.
He's one of the guys you mentioned earlier, Adrian, like a guy whose level of performance is so consistently excellent that it can be taken for granted at times. And I look at Tyke Byrne and virtually every game he plays for Ireland, and when you consider the body of work he has under his belt now, he's one of the greatest players to ever put on that jersey. He is one of the greatest ever Ireland players.
World class.
Yeah. He is unbelievable. The word unbelievable a lot. I'm sorry. I was excited yesterday.
Blindside, we've so far gone Cian Prendergast against France, Cormac Izuchuka against Italy, Tyke Byrne against England, Jack Conan against Wales, and then Conan obviously again yesterday. So an embarrassment of riches, to say the least. But if we're going with that other second row, then that kind of looks after itself, does it?
Yeah, but Baird would be a big player there as well. He's a guy who can really mix it with the
But he's not getting Byrne out of there.
But he'd bring some punch off the bench,
Yeah.
And then it's can you have him and Conan on the bench? You'd have to, because they're both so good. But you'd have to find a way. It'd probably a 6-2.
It's just a great conversation to have, because you don't get noticeably weaker no matter who you start there.
Josh Van Der, go on.
Just on this, it's also the case, when you're kind of fantasizing about the options available to you, they're never all going to be.
Listen, let's go with the fantasy. I know
it won't be as difficult as
there's a reality to this conversation, correct?
I just mean it's not going to be as hard to fit them all in.
Listen,
reality,
and there's form and all those sorts of nuances.
7 is more troublesome, Adrian. Because,
is it?
Well, Timothy's done really well. He wouldn't be your traditional groundhog kind of open side, but he's done really well. So we've got 2 options there. We need to find another one. They don't seem to fancy John Hodnett out of Munster. Alex Candellin, they kind of in 2 minds about. So maybe Bryn Ward.
And again, on your point about the centres, it's just too different of a position to.
Well, you know what? Last week, Caelan Dar started at 8, right? But he actually played most of the game at 6 as it played out, and then would kind of revert to 8 for set piece, etc. They are different positions, but I feel as though in recent times they've become, the back row has become almost a little bit more uniform in your duties. So. And we've seen Doris at 7, for example. So I don't know.
I do like the balance though of a tall 6, ball carrying 8, scavenging 7. Best guy there, and has been for a few years, is Scott Penny. The problem is he won't leave. I don't want to say he won't leave that. He's at Leinster on the books, but not getting enough frontline exposure. He's the most with Van der Fleer. Yeah. So can something be done there? But that scenario, I would still say, is one to look
at. 8. We can move past, I think, depending on various bits and pieces. So we'll go the other direction then, and we'll start with 15 maybe. Hugo Keenan has been looking at this tournament thinking, oof, I am under pressure here.
Yeah.
Legitimate pressure.
Yeah, well, we just haven't seen Hugo, in so long.
Yeah.
It depend on the speed with which he's able to get back up to speed. Osborne has been exceptional, really.
Yeah.
And that's one that Farrell deserves full credit for. Osborne wasn't playing a fullback for Leinster when Farrell threw him in South Africa to play fullback for Ireland. And, he's what's he scoring? Like a try every game virtually at this point, and like they're all kind of close range finishes. The one against England was quite a good finish, but like he's just been sound, hasn't he? Probably Keenan-esque in a way. I would say against Wales, just the way Wales kicked the ball. Actually, they kicked quite well. Dan Edwards and co. Like he probably struggled a tiny bit with just his instinct for the backfield and where to be, which was the first time I kind of noticed that with him. I think usually he is good, and maybe it was just a slight off day. That was just my interpretation of it.
Well, it would stack up with it not being his position.
Yeah, exactly.
The goalkeeper bit.
100%. Like it's a really underrated part of or maybe an underestimated aspect of playing fullback is like actually knowing where to be at virtually all times. And if you haven't been playing that position growing up or for long as a senior, which he hasn't been, like it's tough. You're going to probably have a couple of blips here and there. It didn't prove costly, and it's only a tiny little.
But Keena gets the nod, is the point.
I would say,
in form.
Personally, yes.
Yeah.
Well, he'd have to earn his place back.
Exactly. Yeah.
But he was so good before.
Yeah.
One thing about Keenan is like, that operation that he's had, like that hip issue was bothering him for a couple of years, and I would have said like last season there was maybe a tiny, like borderline imperceptible but perceptible dip in his form, and like you never know, like he could come back a new man from that, having had that issue sorted out. Once he does get back up to speed, like we might see closer to kind of 2023 Hugo Keenan, in which case, and that's a big if, but in which case he is the starting
with a solid backup if needs be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What was your conclusion to the Balogun or Hansen point earlier?
Oh, Jesus, Balogun all day long. I just like pace in the team, and I think that another penny that's dropped now. Like O'Brien is rapid, Balogun's rapid. Do you see the try Balogun scored yesterday? Hansen's a great player, but his game is different. I don't know, does Hansen score that try?
I think Hansen could become a fullback option.
Hansen would be a great fullback option, and you need a third option.
Is he ahead of Osborne?
I would,
fullback.
I would think so. Yeah.
Hansen's skill is that he's inventive, isn't he? And he's off the cuff, and that could be so important.
Takes a lot of pressure off Crowley, say if it is Crowley or Prendergast or Harry Byrne, whoever
it's the old X Factor argument, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's just like he's so capable of standing in at first receiver. And like we've seen Hansen like produce like beautiful crossfield kicks. And things. Like he played a lot.
He's definitely the guy you want in the squad.
He allows it to decentralise your attack a little bit away from it being out half focused. Now Ireland have obviously, like Gibson Park has probably taken the lion's share of that in the last couple of games. Although Crowley was again like quite assertive yesterday, Hansen just gives you that option to. Yeah. Honestly, the defence just has to think about more. And Osborne is like he's a decent passer, but like I wouldn't say he's a natural born playmaker even as a centre. He's
a smart player though. He runs good depth and he's clever.
We'll skip through the rest of these because I do want to get some of the other stuff. Left wing, if you're going for pace, I'm saying Tommy O'Brien, and we move on from that. And then the centres are troublesome, like we've discussed. But McCluskey and Ringrose really, and then you're kind of looking at
Henshaw's going back into the mix, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, he needs to rediscover form. Like it's kind of been a while, and it's easy to forget.
And Osborne can play there.
Yeah. Like I would say, Osborne is probably ahead of Henshaw in the pecking order.
We have real depth in every position except 7, and
I think scrum half as well. As in only because we haven't seen enough of Nathan.
There's so many talented scrum halves there, but we have to see.
Well, it's the gap.
Yeah.
There's really talented scrum half. Doak is a baller, a serious player.
Yeah.
People, I keep hearing Devine is class, Finton Gunn, Murphy. There's a lot of talent there.
Devine going back up to Ulster to work under Mark Sexton is an exciting prospect.
And Casey can still.
Casey is an excellent player. He probably didn't have his the championship he would have liked to have had. But that's the point, Adrian. You kind of nailed it there. It's a drop off from Gibson Park to anybody else.
Yeah. So to summarise, we're laughing.
We're flying.
We're back.
I don't think we have a team, but we're flying it. I want to come to the Conor McKeown piece, but I do want to say that the I think that even after last night, watching the game last night, and we all feel a little bit like, I think you probably summed it up earlier on, might have even been out in the office, Gav, like that, we should be happy with what we have sort of thing. It was probably France deserved to win, I think was the way you worded it. Like, I think we can also feel a little, sorry, I feel a little bit hard done by, right? I'm not going to lie.
Well, whatever but deserve, like, I think it's like I wasn't absolutely galled. Now, to be fair, I didn't watch the full game either. So
we were straight into the box.
Yeah, but I just mean, like, firstly, when France got the penalty, Thomas Ramos is going to score it. So I'm already making peace with it as he's lining up his kick. But equally, it's like, France gave us a hiding first day.
On that point, I went to apply some Roy Keane logic to this earlier on. Ireland have won six nations since it became 6, turn of the millennium. 3 of those were Grand Slams. So then, obviously, in the other ones, we were relying on others if we were going to win the championship. And of those three, in 24, we hammered France 38-17 in Paris. We beat France in 2015 in Dublin 18-11 and in 2014. So the other three that we won, 2014, we beat France by 2 points in Paris. Of the other three we won, we always beat France ourselves.
Right.
Don't be relying on other teams. That's the that was. Sorry, I wanted to say that because I feel more comfortable verbalising it and getting it out there.
Well, you'd accept the overall attitude that I think one of the back pages was triple frown, and you rightly said that doesn't capture the mood. There's still a feeling of elation.
I think so. I think there would have been a far. It struck me earlier when you were talking, actually, Hugh, that there would have been a far bigger feeling of elation. Had France beaten England out the gate. We could have said, "Grand. Well, listen, we're really happy where we're at." The only frustration that's there, I think, is just how cigarette paper
just
thin
a quick point, a very quick point on that match. How England were leading with 2 minutes to go, was it? And they won a turnover. This is where Pollock won the turnover. What a player Pollock is. And then he tries to offload it.
Yeah.
Like silly stuff.
Like if you've heard the media row in the three arena.
I didn't read in the papers. They were all talking about the penalty and Genge and stuff, but that was the game. Like, but he's a phenomenal player.
Ollie Chesham scores a try and just so unnecessarily touches it down in the corner. He had acres of space in which he could have made the kick easy.
I was shouting, "Get in!" roaring at the TV. Like, how does that happen?
They're dangerous though, because that pack plays like that, they'll bust on you pack up.
Yeah. Well, they were grand to be that way for 80 minutes. They could go back to the way they were now after that. That's, Conor McKeown, hold the back page in the Sunday Independent. Can we just calm down? And a picture of a pretty happy Jack Crowley beside it there. Conor McKeown's piece, everything basically gets caught in the net here. The volume of the coverage around rugby, the hysteria around it, the hyperbole around it, the boom-bust nature of the coverage. He says here, when every game is a revelation or a terminal diagnosis, there's nothing faintly exhausting about it. But I suppose the feeling that, like, the beauty of sport... I'll give another quote here. Irish Rugby's ludicrous self-regard, the demand always for the definite article, for affirmation of just how historically and culturally consequential all of this is, when sometimes it's just what happened. So, as always, when Conor writes, there's a humour about it to it that you don't see hugely elsewhere. But it also feels like that everything he's describing there is the reason I watch sport. Like, I want to get carried away with it. There's too much other serious stuff going on for me to apply the same logic with something that happens in the office to what I'm watching on the pitch.
Listen, I played rugby growing up, but I've always been like, I've never felt like a kind of a rugby person per se. And I host a rugby podcast for the company I work for, and other people would probably perceive me to be one. I've spent the last probably 40 minutes or whatever talking about it.
I would perceive you to be one.
I really like it, but I like all, most sports. But like, so I've always understood how certain people would find all of the exceptionalism around it, the really liberal use of the word heroic and things like these, gallant, etc., the kind of corporate hashtags that feel like calls to arms or almost as though you're being conscripted to support a team or to involve yourself in a sport in which you have no interest. Like, I can understand how all of that would annoy people. I can understand how people would feel as though the coverage of rugby in this country is disproportionate versus the kind of hardcore interest in it compared to other sports. And I get all of that. And the whole idea or the concept of rugby values and things like that, they annoy me, even as somebody who loves the sport. So to a degree, I get it. But, like, I probably... Listen, I enjoyed reading Conor's piece, despite the fact that I disagreed broadly with most of it, and I kind of feel like probably could have waited a couple of weeks. I don't know, but he makes some good points as well about that. I think you touched upon it earlier, Adrian, like that sort of sense of polar extremes in how we discuss performance as it pertains to Ireland, at least.
Don't we do that about the Kerry footballers and the Dublin footballers and the soccer team? And
yeah, there's a real resentment towards rugby. And, like, I know Conor a long time. We did the Flannery's Copper Circuit together back in the day. And he's a great lad. And I think, and in fairness, I think he's owning this spot on the back of the Sindo now, as Gavin said. And I'd agree. I would agree with a lot of the sentiment. We are, as we just discussed for the last 40 minutes, a boom and bust kind of thing. We were in here talking about pathways and whether now stuff a few weeks ago, and here we are now, like, high-fiving each other over how many options we have. So, but Conor has... he portrays that simmering resentment towards rugby from soccer and GA. And I really don't want to get into our sport is better than yours kind of stuff, because I agree with Gavin. There's lots of elements to rugby. Some of the ads are nauseating. You know, the language about, oh, let's paint a picture for the referee, all this terminology, you're kind of...
The emotional pitch is one of my favourites.
Yeah, there's just a lot of like rubbish that goes to rugby. There is all the private school background to it and all that. There's the wax jackets and the hip flask, and if you want to go back in the day, and there's all that, right? But it is hugely popular, and it is a bit of an anomaly, as Gavin referenced, because it's not a hardcore rugby support. So a lot of people who came into the game, I would say, post Brian O'Driscoll, Munster, 2000s, and what of it? I mean, you look at the viewing figures, it's up there higher than the All-Ireland finals, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what annoys the soccer and GA fraternity, but it doesn't have to annoy them to this extent. I mean, like Conor has a line here, in the good old days, which in typical Irish rugby fashion were interspersed with the bad old days, some of us needed a sick bag when informed we had matured as a nation after the crowd at Ireland's 2007 Six Nations match with England in Croke Park heroically declined to boo God Save the Queen.
Who would have made that point? I don't remember any of the players or any of the coaches making.
Also, I was at that game, and I thought it was brilliant. No, I thought it was brilliant that there was a respect, because we can't forget that there was a tension around what was going to happen when that thing got played. I'm not saying if it was booed that it was the worst thing in the world, but I am saying that that's what happened.
Yeah, I think I remember. Look, I was pretty young, I suppose, at the time, but I remember thinking it is pretty cool, given all of the hysteria around it for the week in advance of it.
I don't think it was put on. I don't think it was forced. I know the GA were kind of going, this is our ground. And do you remember, like, they had to, Sean Kelly opened it up, and that was huge goodwill towards the GA from that, you know. It's just a bit of a one, like, it's not one I'd be going at for, because that seemed to be a very natural, fluid occasion.
But my point, like, around, like, who would have said that we matured as a nation? Like,
oh yeah,
that sounds like something that, like,
sure, somebody did say
an afternoon radio presenter would say on RTE or News Talk or whatever.
Probably RTE.
Yeah, let's say. But it kind of the annoyance that causes some people gets ascribed to rugby. Then, like, rugby is the problem, as opposed to somebody who's probably one of the passive rugby fans that we're talking about, making a kind of a cultural or social point that only barely pertains to rugby in the first place. But it's like, maybe to Conor or to certain GA fans, soccer fans, it's like, oh, more rugby, bollocks off.
There's a counter culture to rugby and rugby coverage that diminishes the vast 90 whatever % of people who just enjoy rugby. Yeah. And it feels like we're not entitled to enjoy it.
I don't care what they like. We are. I don't care what they think at all.
Pieces like that, and he's not alone. There's lots of it out there. You don't have too far to go.
I can't argue with him too much. I mean, I did point with him last year for Donegal Boys going away, and I slagged him because he's a great man to put the boot into rugby, but he's over at the Masters there, you know, inhaling the
aliens. I mean,
do you know what I mean?
Sake,
of all the institutionalized kind of, and I won't go with the Masters, but like, people would be surprised, because I don't want to beat the AL drum, but I would go to AL as often as I can. It's like going to a GA match. There's no rubbish around it. It's just fellas who are into it. Their kids are playing. It's like being at the Bars versus Blackrock or something. You know, it's a real down salt.
But there is a picture painted. Apologies for the 55,000 people who were at the Aviva yesterday as being wax jacket wearing.
Private school
they're all from Donnybrook. They love to drink Hino, blah, 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 blah. I was at the stadium yesterday. Yeah. There are absolutely some of those people there, and then the vast majority of them are probably a bit like myself. They just love watching rugby.
But if that is...
You're made feel bad about that, like it's...
But who cares? Like, honestly, if that's the picture that's being painted, who cares?
Connor's tongue in cheek. I wouldn't get wild. I enjoy his writing, and he's a good columnist because he gets us talking.
He's excellent.
And he's not wrong. He's not wrong, and he's definitely not wrong on the boomer bust stuff.
Anybody who listens to this,
keep doing what he's doing
with any kind of regularity, will be fed up with me saying how every week I'm absolutely fawning over this fella, and what a great writer he is. So there's nothing.
I'd never slag him off. He's a good lad. He said patronisingly.
He's a good lad.
Good lad.
Tom Court.
Oh my God. We have about 6 or 7 minutes here. So the other pieces, and you can pick from these as you wish. We have a David Walsh in the back page of the Sunday Times about misguided and whinging McManus and Mullins. Didn't read the room at Cheltenham. We've the passing of Ronnie Delaney writing there. Carl Dennehy, Tommy Conlon, Michael Foley writing about him. And a sad passing this week. Ger Siggins on Afghan cricket. We've Robbie Keane with Shane McGrath. So go on, you get a piece each. What do you want?
I just give Ger a quick mention because he approached me about Orla McElroy, who's sports editor, about doing the piece, and there was a lot going on. I said, yeah, go for it and whatever. And then I read it, and it's powerful. It's Ireland are due to play Afghanistan. I think it's in a five match series, and Ger, who is by far the most knowledgeable and talented of cricket writers out there. He did a piece a few weeks ago which got huge traction about the 7-point plan to save Irish cricket. It's a niche market, but there's no one better at it. And he just goes through the history of Afghan's cricket.
A tour too far. Afghanistan are due to play 5 matches in Ireland this summer, but should we be hosting representatives of a regime that has just legalised wife beating?
Politics and sport are there's a lot of it going on at the moment. But when you read the piece and how the women's team were banned from playing, they had to play in exile. The country that has actually legalised wife beating, the UN have described it as female genocide. You know, sometimes you have to take a stand, and Ger makes a very strong link between this and the apartheid era and rugby, which Ireland has a shocking, shameful record in, because we openly toured South Africa in 1981, and we were very pally-ziwalzy at committee level with the South African officials, which is a bit of a stain on our history. I remember in school doing up a petition in '89 because we were sending players over to this RB game. We have a bad history in rugby, and he draws the comparison there. And it's a very strong, well-argued, and very hard to argue with piece. And it's in the Mail on Sunday today. It's up on Mail Online too. And I would say, hopefully now, because when Ger writes something, Cricket Ireland are on the edge of their seats, and they'll be reading that today, and they might have a rethink.
Yeah, it's definitely a zeitgeist aspect to it in terms of the Taliban conversation
stuff.
coming up.
It's shocking to read what's going on.
We'll go maybe to David Walsh. We'll read the misguided and whinging McManus and Mullins didn't read the room at Cheltenham. So obviously after the week that was, this is David Walsh, back pages on the Times. Talks about JP McManus withdrew his horse fact to file from the Ryanair chase as he felt the ground wasn't soft enough. People are familiar with the story, bulbed up during the week. Nothing remarkable about the decision itself, writes David Walsh, and then goes on to quote JP McManus here. You're only as strong as the weakest link in the course, and it doesn't matter if 80% or 90% is right. If 10% of it isn't right, that's good enough for me. David Walsh says, it sounded like McManus was saying more should have been done for his horse. And then he goes on to quote Willie Mullins, the fact-to-file trainer. If the ground is going to be like this, we're not going to bring them. We were promised watering, and I'm not sure the watering we were promised has been done. I'm a little bit annoyed about that. David Walsh says there was no complaint from any other trainer, jockey or owner about the ground. So what he's saying is, fine to be upset, and I am no expert in this, but fine to be upset about the ground. You wanted a bit, you wanted it watered a bit more. You're absolutely fine to withdraw your own horse around that. But the insinuation, as I think he gets from the two comments, that if it's going to be like this, we're not coming. He feels that's a bridge too far.
Yeah, it's like the inverse of Cork hurling manager Ben O'Connor. You know, it's not soft enough. But I kind of felt as though Mullins maybe misread the room slightly in a different way as well, in terms of how he was speaking about the horses and the reasoning for perhaps making the determination that they wouldn't send them to Cheltenham in such circumstances again. Let me just be clear, I know that Willie Mullins very much cares for his animals, his horses, but the terminology he was using was very much sort of describing them as assets or acquirements, and he makes a point these horses are too difficult to get and to acquire, etc. Now he does say when you have them, you mind them, but it was kind of mostly through the lens of them being assets. It sounded and as somebody
we're not. It's a lot about buying them.
And listen, it's a tiny little snippet of an interview. And again, I appreciate these people take unbelievable care of these horses, but there was such a sour end to the weekend with what happened to Envoy. And as somebody who, personally, I don't enjoy the sport, and I just want to be I'm not going to pontificate here, trust me, and I don't judge anybody who does enjoy it, because I can it's a pulsating, compelling spectacle, absolutely. I'm somebody who spent last night watching probably 20 lads poke the heads off each other in a blood sport. The distinction I would make is obviously that those guys do it of their own free will, and horses are bred to race and don't necessarily understand exactly what they're doing. And then, Envoy Alan wouldn't have died in such circumstances if we weren't using horses for our own entertainment. That's just my own personal persuasion on it. I completely understand if people have a really different interpretation of it. And I know people who are involved in horse racing. I know people who cover horse racing. They're some of the best people ever, you know what I mean? So trust me, I'm not judging them. I found it I watched that, just happened to see that Willie Mullins interview at the time live, and it's just like, it feels a bit icky to me to be kind of speaking about horses in this way. And what was, I'm sure, a phenomenal week kind of ended on a very, it was a sad note, to me at least, it's just like, that doesn't need to be happening, but...
I think you summed it up brilliantly there. I've no time for Cheltenham. Especially since COVID and what they did that year. They were so insistent on going ahead. Yeah. And the sense of entitlement to it. I think Gavin summed it up perfectly there.
Yeah. Here we are talking about sense of entitlement of another sport. We're just there's nothing we can watch these days. No, I take it. I don't want to diminish your points or make little of them. We'll point people to the other pieces that we mentioned, and thank you for coming in. I do feel as if we could do another hour and a half or 2 hours in this entire thing.
Fast, didn't it?
It went very quickly, but we got through a lot. So, Gavan Casey, thank you very much.
Thanks, Adrian.
Hugh Farrelly, thanks a lot for coming in.
Pleasure.
That was the Sunday Paper Review, and Off the Ball is brought to you by Optimum Nutrition. We're delighted to team up with Optimum Nutrition, the world's #1 performance nutrition brand, as they launch their new global campaign, the Optimum Advantage. With over 35 years at the top of performance nutrition, trusted by the world's best athletes, and a growing partnership with the IRFU, Optimum Nutrition are right at the heart of Irish rugby. Good luck.
The Sunday Paper Review on Off the Ball.
With Optimum Nutrition, the official performance nutrition partner of the IRFU.
This is News Talk.